Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Alexia, and today I thought it'd be super fun to do an experiment on how to quicken my reading pace and just sharing it with you guys and anyone else who's interested in maybe learning how to read a little bit quicker. I thought it would be really fun to just kind of do some research and investigate on what can actually make you read a little bit quicker, but also keeping it fun still, because that's the most important part. I found an article and I can link it down below if anyone is interested in reading it, but essentially there are 4 main things to basically help you read faster. So the first one is avoiding subvocalization and regression. I had no idea what that was, so if you were like me, then here are the definitions of each one. Subvocalization is that voice in your head that reads the words when you're reading them. Basically, there's some people like me, which I didn't know that this wasn't quote unquote normal. There are some people who focus on vocalizing what they read a lot more than other people. At least I think so. That's kind of the impression I got based off trying to lessen the subvocalization. So what I do is I literally narrate a book as if I am creating a whole cinematic masterpiece in my mind while I'm reading. But I also learned that because I'm narrating everything as it's happening and creating voices for my characters and really just getting into it. Can you tell I was a theater kid in high school? It really takes up time in reading, so you don't read as fast when you do that. Try to decrease your subvocalization, and then that way it'll help you read a little bit more quickly. Now, regression is defined as going back to reread what you've just read. It's obviously normal if you kind of space off and then you have to reread what you just read, but for me, sometimes I just reread what I just read because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. I really like to absorb every single word I'm reading. This happens a lot when a narrator lists a bunch of words together, like the market was filled with bread and the wonderful smells of butter mixed with the fish from the sea. If I think I missed one of those descriptors, I will go back and reread it. It'll be interesting to kind of challenge the process in which I read already. That'll be fun. The second tip is the pointer method / the tracker and pacer method. The pointer method is when you go along, sounds like what it is. So you go along the lines and read it with your finger. And the tracker and pacer method is when you do it with a pen, like the back of your pen. These were separate ones, but for me, it was a little bit too similar for me to do 2 separate investigations of each one. So I'm just gonna group into one. Do whichever one you prefer. The third tip is cover the words you've already read. So going in with a bookmark or a piece of paper and literally just going along the page as you're reading, so that way it decreases your chances of succumbing to regression, and I think it also is less distracting because then you won't accidentally glance at what you just read. The fourth and last one is avoiding distractions, trying to read in a space that doesn't have visual, audio, ding ding ding, I think that's a word. Any distractions basically of the senses. Another distraction that is more common is obviously technology, so trying not to have a TV on or a computer nearby or a phone so that you won't automatically reach over and start mindlessly scrolling. I'm going to do each one for 30 minutes and I'll be back after each one to tell you how it went. I will be keeping track of how many pages I'm reading during each one. Hey guys, so I'm editing and I realized I didn't say that I wasn't doing the 4th method after all, which is just no distractions. I just thought it was kind of redundant because all of the methods I did kind of call for no distractions. So yeah, not doing that. Sorry if that was a disappointment, probably not. Just wanted to pop in and explain that. First, I am going to get my current reading pace. So back in September 18th last year, I timed myself and because I was just curious of how fast I read. And I guess in an hour I read 32 pages, which equals to 16 pages in a half an hour. So I am going to redo my reading pace and see how much I read now in 30 minutes, and I'll be back to give you a current reading pace so that way you can compare the methods to see if I'm actually reading faster or not. It's getting scientific in here. I am reading All the Light You Cannot See, and that for me is a slower read right now, so I don't want to use that book for this research. That sounds so fancy. I think I will be struggling. So I brought my TBR jar, and I'm going to let this pick a book for me. Let's see what the TBR gives me. 4 of them fell out, so I'm just gonna open them all up and pick from there to give myself options. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, Crying in H Mart. Oops, bro. I'm just over here ripping my post-it notes. Things We Never Got Over. And the second one, or fourth one, is Pride and Prejudice. Not gonna do Pride and Prejudice. I love you, but we're not doing that right now. That sounds awful. If I think that historical fiction is a slower read for me, then a classic is just not gonna be there. This is hard. I'll leave Crying in H Mart in the jar because I really want to enjoy that one. That leaves The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue or Things We Never Got Over. I'm a little bit salty still that I just couldn't get through 15 pages of Pretend You're Mine. On one hand, I'm like, I don't even want to try that, but on the other hand, I'm like, that would be a faster read, probably, or feel easier for me. I'll leave The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue for some other time. I'm going to try Things We Never Got Over. I'll be back while I go grab that, and I'm gonna read for 30 minutes to see what my reading pace is. Okay, it's been 30 minutes and I read up to page 18, so I guess my average went up. That's my cat playing with her toy. So I guess my average went up a little bit, I guess by 2 pages. I am just gonna go and move on, gonna time myself for 30 more minutes, and I'm going to start with the trying to avoid subvocalization and regression as much as possible. I did notice I kept going back and rereading stuff because I kept spacing out, and a little bit had to do with the fact that they decided to leaf blow and mow the lawn outside of my apartment complex, so that was just so distracting. And I kept having to go back over and over and over again. I shall see y'all in 30 minutes.
I shall see y'all in 30 minutes. 30 minutes.
Good morning. I'm back. It's actually the next day. Yesterday, that was my 8th day of working in a row, and today is my first day off in said 8 days. So yesterday I was really just dying down, and even when I was taking the footage for my current reading pace, I could just feel myself really I just felt so dead. I was thinking about having to read for basically 2 more hours for this video, and it just sounded atrocious. I just wasn't in the right state, I guess. That's Disco. Meow. Hi, baby. What you doing? Watching some birds? Also, if you hear screaming children, there is like a kindergarten or preschool right behind me. So, sorry if you hear random screeches. Today I got to sleep in. I got my Starbies. I got some oatmeal from there and some water. Don't forget to hydrate. I feel so much better today. I feel much more prepared to basically read for 2 hours. Also, yesterday I was about to start filming the sub-vocalization / regression. When I was trying to go into it without sub-vocalization, I was like, how do you not do that? I went back, and apparently sub-vocalization directly translated is when you kind of read the words as you're reading them, like a little bit out loud, or I don't know if any of you have like kind of whispered the words as you're going, or like mouth it as you're reading. So that also goes into sub-vocalization. I feel like I do that sometimes, but definitely not too much. So I just wanted to point that out too, that falls under sub-vocalization. Didn't really find anything for how to stop that a little bit. They say to kind of soften your gaze and use your peripheral vision, so that when you're reading, you're kind of seeing groups of words at a time rather than focusing on each individual word as you're reading. In terms of regression, apparently regression, conscious rereading, or back skipping, which is subconscious rereading, makes up to 30% of total reading time. That's a lot of time just rereading. So can you imagine how much faster we can read if we don't go back and reread things? Enough of my rambling. I'm going to eat my breakfast real quick, and then I will check back in after I do the sub-vocalization and regression study. Hey guys, I'm back. I am so pleasantly surprised with how well this went. I ended on page 45, but I ended at the top of it, so technically I read up to page 44 from page 19. I was able to read 25 pages, which is 7 more than my normal pace, which is kind of crazy. I did feel myself kind of rereading things 4 or 5 times, but I really did try to push myself to not do that. And it was kind of crazy how much you actually do retain things that you've already read. Because I think before I used to kind of reread things because I'm like, oh, I didn't actually comprehend what I just read. When I felt the urge to reread things and I pushed myself to just keep reading, I actually did remember pretty much everything I read. I think this was actually very successful, and it's kind of insane that I was able to read like 7 more pages than my normal pace just by doing that. I would say that's pretty successful. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the pointer / pacer method. I think I'm going to do the tracker and pacer method. I have my little pen right here. I'm gonna go away for 30 more minutes and see how much I read this time around. Hey guys, I'm checking in. This one went pretty well. I read 28 pages in 30 minutes. I started on page 45 and I made it to, I'm technically on page 74, so I read up to page 73. I read 3 more pages than using the last method. Pretty cool. I did notice that using the pen made it so much easier to just going through the sentences really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the third method, which is just covering everything you read. So I'll see you guys in 30 minutes. was actually not very successful for some reason. I started on page 74 and I ended up on page 92. I only fully read up to page 91, so technically I read 17 pages, which is one less than my normal reading pace, which was super interesting. For some reason, I did find myself going a lot slower, having to cover the words I already read. For some reason, it just kind of threw off my reading pace, and I was just so focused on trying to read the lines and then covering it, but then also trying to remember what I read. So yeah, I would say that one was the least successful for me. I don't know, it was interesting. So in summary, my standard reading pace was 18 pages. Using the avoiding subvocalization / regression, I read 25 pages. With the track and pacer method, I read 28 pages. For the last one, where I covered the words I already read, I read 17 pages. So obviously the last one I did was the least successful in terms of actually increasing the pace, at least for me. The one I thought I enjoyed the most was the track and pacer method. That was also the most successful one. I just thought that one was so easy to not overthink. It was just really quick to just go over the lines as I was reading, and I didn't really think about anything else. I did like the first one too. I just think I was kind of overthinking it a little bit, and I was so focused on trying not to reread or trying not to use the subvocalization. Overall, I think I learned a lot. This was super fun to do. Let me know if you liked this type of video down below. Let me know if you guys have any tips for how to read faster. Let me know if you learned something new or if you try any of these new methods. I'm super stoked because I got a good ways into this book. I'm on page 92 now. This was super fun. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week, and I hope to see you very soon. Bye. Disco. Oh my god. My cat be on X Games mode right now. It's science, bitch.